Okay, this is a brief PowerPoint about Southern literature. You're reading about 4 stories from Southern writers this semester, so I wanted to give you some common themes you'll see. You'll be reading 2 stories by O'Connor, A Good Man is Hard to Find, and Revelation, and then you'll be reading Faulkner, Barn Burning, and A Rose for Emily. Some common characteristics that you'll find in Southern literature is the desire for the good old days. And frequently, Southern writers are aware of the paradox of this, the way that memory, how we remember things incorrectly, we remember things fondly when really they weren't all that great to begin with. And as a result of this overwhelming misremembering of the past, there's also a feeling of, frequently in the characters of these stories, a feeling of resentment towards the young whippersnappers, towards the new generation who comes in with their new ideas and wants to change the way things were. And as I mentioned before, or the way things are, the romanticism of the past. What that means is that there's this fond remembrance of how things used to be. You'll see this especially at the end with A Rose for Emily in Faulkner's story, when the old surviving members of the Confederacy who still live in the town remember courting Miss Emily when chronologically that would have been impossible. This fond remembrance of the past. Or in A Good Man is Hard to Find, how the grandmother and Red Sammy talk about it's not like it used to be. You have to lock your doors, and there aren't any good men anymore. This romanticism of how good things used to be. Some common themes, or common threads, I guess you can say, that you'll find in Southern literature is religion and morality. You'll see a lot of this in O'Connor. The idea of that turning point, the having this religious focal point in her stories. Also, the loss of innocence. We see this with Sardi in Faulkner's Barn Burning. That Bildungsroman story, the coming of age story. You will see that with Barn Burning. Also, family ties and screwed up families. You'll see a lot of dysfunctional families in Southern literature. You might notice in Barn Burning, Abner, the father, and how he says, you've got to learn to stick to your own blood or you won't have any blood stick to you. And this decision between what's right by your family and what's morally right or ethically right in the bigger sense. Again, talking about romanticism of the past, to get more specific, the characters in these Southern stories tend to have this fear of forgetting what's important. Also, but at the same time, the danger of forgetting, of not remembering where you came from, but also the danger of not letting go. You can't stay in the past either. So when we see Miss Emily, she doesn't want to let go of the past. In fact, to the point where, she has we find something really strange in her bedroom at the end. She doesn't get involved in life. She can't let go of anything. She can't accept death or change of any kind. So the romanticism of the past, the flip side of that is, you don't want to forget the past. You need to remember it accurately. At the same time, you don't want to stay stuck in it either. Also, empty symbolism. I'll give you an example of another story that was by O'Connor called A Late Encounter with the Enemy. And we will not be reading that this semester, but in A Late Encounter with the Enemy, the Southern soldier who is being honored, he's called a colonel or general, and he never was. He was just a foot soldier, and he was in one battle, and he didn't do anything courageous. Yet they are honoring him and making him this huge symbol of the South that is no more. So he's an empty symbol, because in reality he wasn't any of the things that they're celebrating him to be. Also, the grotesque or taboo. We see that a lot with Faulkner stories. If you've ever read the book, I I'm blanking on the book right now, but we see that in a Miss Emily, A Rose for Emily. We definitely see the grotesque or taboo, and you'll see a lot of incest or necrophilia or these strange things that happens behind closed doors in these dysfunctional families. So these are things that tend to come up in Southern literature. Some popular Southern writers. This is just a list of some few people from the past who were very famous Southern writers. William Faulkner and O'Connor, of course, we'll be reading them. Tennessee Williams, he was a playwright. He wrote A Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Catherine Ann Porter, the Catherine Ann Porter House. She wrote the Jilting of Granny Weatherall, which a lot of people have read. It's a pretty commonly anthologized story. Her house is actually, she grew up outside of San Marcos in Buda, Texas, and her house is there, and there's a literary series. Writers come there frequently and read for the public. Alan Tate, Robert Penn Warren, Eudora Welty, Zora Neale Hurston, and Margaret Mitchell. These are some popular Southern writers of the past, and just so we don't think that Southern writing is a thing of the past, there are some more contemporary Southern writers. Toni Morrison is a Southern writer. In fact, she did her PhD on Faulkner. You almost cannot analyze Morrison without thinking of Faulkner. She's very heavily influenced by him, or was at least in her early work. She's done Beloved. That was a very popular one that was made into a movie, as well as many others. Song of Solomon, The Bluest Eye, Jazz, quite a few books by her. Barry Hannah, Cormac McCarthy, No Country for Old Men was originally a novel, again turned into a movie. Also All the Pretty Horses, that's from the Border trilogy. He has 3 books in that series. He's a very, very popular contemporary writer. Fannie Flagg, if you saw Fried Green Tomatoes, again that was originally a book turned into a movie. And Larry McMurtry, can we forget Lonesome Dove? Absolutely not. That actually won a Pulitzer Prize. So there are still contemporary Southern writers who are doing quite well today, not just the ones that we're talking about in this class. One other thing I don't have a slide for, but I want you to bear in mind some other things that you need to take in consideration when thinking of Southern Lit. There was the Civil War, and frequently before the Southerners saw themselves as nobility almost. I mean, if you think about the cotton fields with the plantations, and how we have, in a sense, these noble people living off of slaves, the serfs, right? The slaves that produced all the wealth for the South. And so there's this remembrance of the South saying, oh, the good old days when we had it good. Well, the white people had it good, obviously, because they were the ones in power. And so there's this romanticism of the past, of the good old days before the Civil War. And then, of course, once that changed, and the South, especially economically, was devastated, I think that fostered that idea of, oh, it used to be better, and people aren't what they used to be. So bear that in mind. You'll see that. You'll also see racism. You'll see racism very strong in O'Connor's stories and the Faulkner stories. And please don't confuse the presentation of the way the characters interact with African Americans as the writer's opinion. If you'll notice, the writer is using that to point out hypocrisy, to point out, especially when we're talking about Revelation and Mrs. Turpin, how she is saying one thing out loud, but at the same time she is definitely classifying people and judging people, which is the opposite of what she calls herself, a good Christian woman. That's the opposite of what she's presenting to people. That's the opposite of what she should do. So please bear that in mind, that those things are there, but often to show us, make a point through the characters, that the writer is actually opposite of what the character is saying. Okay, so that concludes this PowerPoint, this brief film about Southern writers. Hopefully this will help give you some more direction regarding what you should write about, what you might want to write about in your essays and your themes for this class.